Hello and welcome to another update. In this one I'll be covering the whole front line, after which I'll be analyzing the situation in Bakhmut, how it got to this point and what is happening. So starting out here in the southern parts, the Russian forces continue their attacks in the direction of Uledar, as well as to the east of Novomikhailivka, to the east of Pobieda, in Marinka, as well as to the north of Marinka, where the Russian forces continue their attacks, attempting to take control over the residential area as well as the area here to the north with some warehouses. Then we move on to the Donetsk front, where the Russian forces continue their attacks in the direction of Nevelsk, as well as Pervomaisk in the center and to the north, in the direction of Severne from Vodiane, as well as in the direction of Avdiivka from Opitne. Then we see fighting here to the east of Avdiivka in the direction of Kamyanka. Moving on to the Bakhmut front, we see here that the Russian forces are attacking in the direction of Ivanivska, as well as in the central area, where they've managed to capture significant parts in the past few days. They have now captured the Avanrad Stadium, as well as most of the territory east, where there's reported that they actually have everything east of the rail lines, except for 3 areas, which is the Bakhmut main train station, which is right here, the last edge of the marketplace, which is right here, and the prison, which is right here. So these 3 areas are the last 3 areas in which there is fighting, and the rest has been taken by the Russian forces, according to Remy, which has direct sources of Wagner soldiers fighting within Bakhmut. Also see fighting here to the north, west of the city, where the Russian forces continue their attacks in the residential area, trying to improve their position and take more territories to threaten the Ukrainian forces from the northwest. As for the west of Bakhmut, fighting continues south of Vahdanivka as well as northwest of Romove, as the Russian forces are trying to reach the 00506 road to physically cut it and take it to move towards Romove. Then we also see fighting between Orehovo-Vasilivka and Ryhorivka, as well as in the E40 highway between Selesnyansk and Orehovo-Vasilivka. Then we move on to the final front, where the Russian forces are attacking in the direction of Bilorivka, as well as Verkhonokamyansk, to the south of Kreminna in the Serebryansky forest area, both to the west of Shipilivka and south of Dubrova, to the west of Kreminna in the direction of Sarishne, and to the northwest of Kreminna in the direction of Cherny and Novosadove, west of Chernopopivka, southwest of Ploshenka in the direction of Nevsky, and northwest of Ploshenka in the direction of Makiivka. And that is all for the whole front. Then we move on to the Bakhmut analysis. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and if you want to support me, you can do so on Patreon, link is in the description, as in the pinned comment. Where the Russian forces have managed to capture everything east of the rail lines that go through the center of Bakhmut and splits the area between the center and the western districts of Bakhmut. The only places where fighting continues to the east of the rail lines are by the prison area, as well as in the extreme western part of the central market and in the area of the main train station. So these 3 areas are exactly where the fighting takes place right now, and after those 3 areas, the Russian forces will control everything east of the rail lines, which means that the fighting will now take place in the western, northwestern and southwestern parts of Bakhmut as a last Ukrainian defensive line within Bakhmut, as they try to hold the city at all costs despite the Russian onslaught. So the real question is, how exactly did we end up into this situation? So what happened was that on the 31st of March, the Russian forces started an operation where they gathered all the Wagner reserves into the city, as well as VDV, Russian paratrooper air force, airborne troops, as well as some special forces of the Russian armed forces. They sent all of these reserves to the front line within Bakhmut, after which they started a surprise offensive. So how exactly was this a surprise, as the Ukrainian forces have been fighting the Russian forces within Bakhmut for many months now? So why was this a surprise? That is because just the day before there was heavy snowfall. And what does that mean? That means that the drones of both sides will not be able to fly. That means that the aerial reconnaissance of both sides during that day was terrible. So how exactly did the Russians manage to conduct their offensives when they themselves had a lack of aerial reconnaissance? That is because they have their night vision gear, which allows them to attack very easily during the nighttime, compared to the Ukrainians who have limited supply of such technology. And at the same time, the Ukrainians did not expect a sudden Russian onslaught with thousands of extra troops suddenly barging in a few days' time. So the Russians started this sudden surprise attack, after which in just a matter of a week, they managed to capture almost all of central Bakhmut, which is a very significant development comparing it to the past few months, where it had taken a month to take the southern, eastern, and northern parts of the Bakhmut city, and comparing that to the fact that the Russian forces have now managed to take the central part within just a week, which is comparable in size to over half of what they spent all of March month to take. So with this sudden development, we now see a situation where the Russian forces now control most of central Bakhmut, and they are only missing 3 different hotspots of fighting, which are the prison area, the extreme western part of the central market, and the area of the main train station. At the same time, the Russian forces have now started attacking the rail line defensive line for the Ukrainians, which means that they're now trying to break into the western district from the center, on top of the fact that they have already broken into the western district from the south as well as from the north. So this current situation means that the Russian forces are now in a situation where they are attempting to take full control over Bakhmut. So they have initiated their final offensive, which is going to attempt to end this battle once and for all after 8 months of fighting. So what are the options for the Ukrainian army now that the Russian forces have the determination to fight onwards and take control over the city? So how will the Ukrainians defend the city that they must hold at all costs? The way they're currently fighting is that they are defending the positions for as long as they can until it is literally impossible to defend, after which they decide to withdraw to the next defensive position. However, this means that they're in a situation where they are fighting a battle of attrition. Who will run out of steam first? Will the Ukrainians keep retreating until they have nowhere to defend and have to leave the city? Or will the Russian steam fall down and the offensive fail as they have lost too much manpower? So the current power balance is in the favor of the Russians, as they have both the Wagner soldiers as well as the Russian forces working together, on top of a significant increase of artillery strikes within the western district, as well as the weather working in their favor by there being a lot of rain, which makes the ground muddy and makes it more difficult for the Ukrainians to conduct any counterattacks to prevent the complete capture of the city. The only way the Ukrainians can do anything right now is to break the semi-encirclement of the city and outflank the Russian forces now that they have been fighting within the city. Urban warfare like this is very exhausting, especially when it has lasted for this long, which means that the Russian forces within the city must be exhausted compared to the ones fighting elsewhere outside of the cities. So this means that the Ukrainian reserves, who have recently been trained and are well equipped, fighting and opening up the encirclement of Bakhmut is the only Ukrainian chance at stopping the complete takeover of Bakhmut by the Russian side. However, the Ukrainians will most likely not risk their only capable offensive force to fight in Bakhmut, especially if such an operation fails and they are unable to conduct a real offensive elsewhere, for example Zaporizhia. This will make it very difficult for the Ukrainians to explain what exactly happened to the soldiers and the equipment they have received. So essentially, we are in a situation where the Ukrainians have to give up on Bakhmut because the Russian forces don't seem like they will be stopping anytime soon, and they continue their onwards takeover of the city. So that is all I have for today's analysis. Thank you all for watching and have a great day.